Yo, what's going on, everybody? How y'all doing today? It's another beautiful day outside to be in the garden, right? I want to thank you guys for tuning in. I know it's been a minute since our last video, and I do apologize for that, but we had a lot going on over the last couple of months. But I am going to try to be a little bit more consistent with putting out the content, because hopefully it's helping somebody. Hopefully you learn from our mistakes and what not to do, and you can have a successful garden, right? So in today's video, what I'm going to do is I want to kind of address two topics, two different myths, I guess you can say. The first myth being that you need a lot of space if you want to have a garden, and that's not true. Now, so that's number one. Number two is that we want to help you so that you don't be like me and Keisha were last year. Last year, we grew absolutely no food through the winter, because we were under the impression that if it grows, if it's a vegetable, it's only going to grow in the warmer months. So we grew nothing in the wintertime, zero. We actually had some kale in the ground already from the summer before, and we kind of just let that go through the winter. Not from the summer before, but from the same summer, but it was already in the ground, and we kind of just let that grow through the winter. And we were like, man, the kale did really good, right? So don't be like us and only plant in the warmer months, because you don't have to. You can still plant things like greens. Greens is a very resilient vegetable to grow. When we were down in San Diego, we saw greens grow all year, no matter what the weather was like. In extreme heat, extreme cold, it didn't matter. It still grew. And if you cut it down, it just keeps coming right back, and it comes back just as strong as it was before. So greens are really good. The kale, like I said before, we started that in the summer, and we just left it alone throughout the winter. We didn't even water it. We didn't even water it through the winter, and it came right back. Matter of fact, here it is right here. That kale right there, those two beds have been there since last summer, and they do just fine, even with like no watering in the winter, right? Then you also have stuff like cabbages. Certain cabbages, I guess, you can grow in the winter. Right now we have Chinese cabbage going, we have broccoli going, cauliflower. We have some more. We have different types of greens. I guess in essence that you could say if it's a fruiting plant, then it's probably not going to do that well in the colder months. Things like eggplant, tomatoes, peppers, melons, cucumbers, like zucchini, all that kind of stuff, that's not going to do so well, right? But things that are green and leafy, like greens, kale, cauliflower, broccoli, some lettuces, even onions. Onions do good over the winter too. Onions, beets, carrots, those can do well in the colder months. So I wanted to address those two topics, as far as growing things all year, and then also growing things when you have confined space, when you're short on space, right? So I'm gonna show you what that could look like. Like, you don't have to stop your garden just because it starts to get cold, right? So don't be like us. That's number one. Number two, if you're limited on space, you can still have your garden going if you have a patio, right? And I'm gonna show you what that looks like right here. So what we got here, right, is I traced out what it would look like if this was a patio, right? So this is from this line to this line is 8 feet, and then from here is 5 feet, right? So it's an 8 by 5 square, okay? What I've done in the middle is I've cut it off by 3 feet. So now this square here is 5 by 5. The reason I did that is because everybody doesn't have the same size patio. So if you have an 8 by 5 patio, if you have somewhere around that amount of space, that's about how much space you have to work with. If you have less, then you can just look at and focus on this part. So when we look at this portion, this is a 5 by 5 square. Now these lines right here in the ground represent where your door could be, right? You just have to, look at your situation, figure out the shape of your patio, where your door sits and all that good stuff, and that's going to tell you what you have to play with. But you guys will get the idea of how much you can actually fit into a 5 by 5 space. So I have 5 buckets in which you guys get the point. You can see where you can actually sit a third bucket on top and pyramid those buckets right there, right? So if you have a patio with a, which you should have a rail, right, that goes around, you can even stack the buckets up high and take up some more vertical space versus floor space or horizontal space, right, or the flat spaces. Now, obviously, you want to be mindful and be careful of how high your rail is, because you don't want these things stacking up so high that if somebody comes by and accidentally bumps them while you're watering, then it goes over the it goes over the side and falls on somebody and hurts somebody, right? So we got to use our better judgment. But you guys can see from look at all that space we have right there. From that edge, which would that line there would represent where the end of the patio would be, maybe your rail, and then all the way over to this wall, right? And then you can even stack going up, right? And then I also have this. This is like a concrete mixing tub. I actually got this idea from Lead Farmer, right? You can even fit one of these inside. And I threw this tub and these two big planters to show you how much space you would actually have, even if you use bigger containers. So these two containers, this tub, you could fit two more of these containers on this side if you wanted to, or you can do an entire patio garden full of buckets, and you can have more buckets, right? And each one could be a different plant. You can have a couple of things, greens, some kales, some lettuces, cabbage, so on and so forth. So you don't have to stop your growing. Your growing season doesn't end in the fall, right? But this is a lot of space, and you still have enough space to come in here and do your watering and do your, and tend to each container and stuff like that. Now, if you do choose to go this route, one thing I would highly recommend is to double up on your buckets, right? And I'm gonna show you what I mean by that. So if you decide to do this method, I would recommend doubling up on your bucket. So basically take a bucket like this. Now, this one has holes in it because it was being used to grow something, right? But take a bucket that has no holes in it. If you want to put the holes that you're actually growing things in, the bucket that you're actually growing things in with the holes inside of the bucket with no holes. Because you want to be a good neighbor, right? You don't want to be like our old neighbors. Our old neighbors had a dog upstairs. We were on the second floor, they were on the third. They had a dog, and the dog would poop on the patio. So when they would clean the poop, they would hose it down, or they would water it down from the third floor, and guess where all that water went? Onto our patio, right? So you don't want to be that guy or that girl, right? So if you're gonna be watering your plants, whether you're watering in the warmer months or the colder months, double up on your buckets. This one doesn't have any holes. This one does have holes. That way, every time you water, the water goes into the bottom bucket and it catches it and stays there, instead of running onto the patio and potentially running out onto your neighbor's patio or somebody else's property, right? We don't want to be that person. We want to be as mindful as we can. So that is highly recommended, right? And then it works just like that, right? It's an easy day. And the good thing about it is, if you double up on the buckets, now it's become somewhat of a self-watering container, right? You water it once, and the water, when it drains out into this bucket, the water is going to continue to be seep up through the bottom bucket. The soil is going to pull the water up into the top bucket, right? And it becomes a self-watering or self-wicking, or whatever you want to call it, container. All right. So that's it, ladies and gentlemen. I just wanted to show you guys that you don't have to end your grow season just because it gets cold. Don't do like we did and just completely bring everything to a screeching halt. I don't even think we came out any in the winter. Like, once it got cold, we were like, oh, that's it. Nothing else is gonna grow. Like, we'll just wait until spring. And we just learned this year that you can actually grow things throughout the colder months, throughout the winter. All right, so that's all that I have for you guys for today. I hope that you guys found this video useful. Don't forget to comment, like, subscribe, do the whole shebang. You guys know what to do, right? Help us out a little bit. Oh, and we want to say thank you. Since our last video, we have reached over 100 subs, and we want to say thank you for everybody that subscribed to the channel. We really appreciate it. We sincerely do, because obviously you didn't have to do it, but you did, and we're grateful for that. So, so yeah. So aside from that, catch you guys on the next go round. Peace out.